there is a lot of feigned outrage on TV, right? Especially people in my position. They pretend sometimes to be indignant. You do not need to fake the funk at all with what we're about to talk about, okay? Here's the question. If you're a member of Congress and you have a bill before you that will benefit a certain company, should you be able to invest in that stock when that legislation is pending? I mean, isn't that an obvious no? I mean, why are members of Congress allowed to trade in stocks at all? And how is it not insider trading if you invest in a company that's benefited by a bill that you have? Now, this would be bothersome enough if it were hypothetical and people were just taking positions on it like, oh, I'm okay with it. It's not hypothetical. How do I know? Quiver Quantitative, Q-U-I-V-E-R. I've talked to you about them before. This app tracks trades by politicians and their spouses. Why'd I hit that so hard? You'll see. And indexes that activity against legislation they're pushing. That's the key part. So Quiver recently reports that in November, Republican member of Congress Mike McCaul disclosed that he traded thousands of dollars worth of stock in a cybersecurity company called Fortinet. And that company, Fortinet, has been lobbying for the passage of a bill called the Pivot Act, which would create a 2-year scholarship for future cybersecurity workers. It's not about the bill, good or bad. It's not what it's about. Then in February, McCaul publicly calls for passage of the Pivot Act in a hearing that benefits a company he had just invested in. Quiver also reported that former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi had been buying stock in another company that was also lobbying for the Pivot Act called Palo Alto Networks. So I hear this. This smells terrible, right? So we reached out to both, okay? Pelosi didn't respond. Shock. McCaul's office did and sent us this statement from his attorney. Congressman McCaul did not purchase these stocks, had no advanced knowledge of the purchase. Rather, his wife has assets she solely owns, and a third-party manager made the purchase without her direction. This company, Fortinet, is not Google, okay? It's not something that everybody has in their portfolio. So that statement means that his wife, without his knowledge, just happened to buy a stock that is not a huge, widely shared stock in a company that just happened to be in a bill that's before him right now. I don't know what's worse, not answering our question or answering it like that. You decide. Let's bring in the CEO of Quiver Quantitative, James Kardatzke. Hey, I got to tell you, I like what you do, my young friend.
Thank you.
Now, first of all, let's look at this backwards. What do you make of McCaul's statement? Wasn't me, it was my wife. And she's got a third-party guy, so who knew?
Yeah, I think the real issue with the current state of regulation on congressional stock trading is that we really have no way of knowing. Like, you know, oftentimes when members of Congress are pressed on these specific trades that are made, they'll point to, you know, it was just my wife, it was just a third-party asset manager. I had no knowledge of what was going on. I definitely wasn't trading off of inside information. And they can say that, James, and we really have no way of checking.
Well, but I mean, it's always like that with insider trading. But James, here's the thing. What did you learn about Fortinet in terms of, you know, how many shares trade on a regular basis, how well known it is, and what the likelihood is that somebody would be picking it up as just like one of the basic stocks to have in a portfolio?
Yeah, it definitely is somewhat suspicious. You know, the fact that not only did he purchase these companies, but at the same time, there's legislation moving through a committee that he's a member of, the Homeland Security Committee, that, you know, Fortinet was very heavily lobbying for. And it would obviously very much benefit that stock if that legislation was passed. So there's a lot of these cases where, you know, we might not have like a smoking gun, like, yes, this was definitely insider trading, but there's just so many factors that line up where it becomes very clear that this member of Congress probably had access to inside information. This member of Congress probably has the power to control factors that might be impacting the stock. And we just don't think that that should even be a scenario that could happen in the first place.
And again, I'm right that Fortinet is not like Google or Apple, where everybody has it in their portfolio, right?
Not at that size. It is a large cybersecurity company, but you're right that it's definitely not as commonly traded as those companies.
Do you believe that Congress should not be able to trade when it comes, well, period, or not when the companies that they are actively buying in are in bills before them at the same time that they're buying?
Yeah, personally, my stance is definitely they shouldn't be allowed to trade, period. There's, I think, a lot of ways that the current regulation could be improved that doesn't go all the way to banning trading. But at the same time, I think no matter where you try to compromise, you're still going to end up with situations where there might be these conflicts of interest. There might be inside information. So, yeah, I think there's been a lot of proposals that are kind of like, okay, we'll go halfway. We'll say, you just can't trade on companies that are very clearly companies that you could impact. But in my opinion, I think it's better just to ban it outright. I don't think there's really a good reason why members of Congress should have access to trading specific single name tickers.
Yeah, my producer is saying, oh, lawmakers go through ethics reviews of their portfolios. But I got to tell you, I've been around that vetting. I don't know how much manpower is committed to it, and I don't know how extensive the vetting is. What do you know?
Yeah, I know that, first of all, I don't think it's perfect. Like, I think that there's a lot of cases where they're not really digging deep into these trades. And also in the instances, even where there is clear violation of the rule, often it's just a slap on the wrist in terms of the penalty that's given out. We've seen instances where members of Congress disclose trades months or even years after the reporting deadline, and they're hit with like a $100, $200 fine. Like, that's nothing for these people. It doesn't really impact their decisions whatsoever. So, yeah, I think there definitely needs to be firmer enforcement of the rules that are actually in place, but really we'd also like to see much firmer rules being put in place just to make sure this doesn't happen at all.
Well, James, you have an open line of communication to me anytime you see anything that you think needs mention. I love what you guys are doing. It is citizen journalism as well as a business proposition that I hope is very profitable for you, because this just stinks to high heaven. Thank you very much for giving us insight into what's going on under our noses.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, James, I'll talk to you again soon, I'm sure. 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Why do they even get to trade? I mean, think about that. You got a bill before you? Oh, I didn't know anything about it. Why even have it? You shouldn't be allowed to do it. You want to serve, serve. All right, I got a Republican member of Congress on the show, Ryan Zinke. Okay, talk about serving the country honorably. Special operator, now in Congress, was a federal secretary as well. What does he make of what Quiver is showing us? And what does he make of what's coming in 48 hours or less? Liberation Day. Is it going to liberate you and me in terms of liberating our wallets because we're going to have to pay more for everything when the tariffs kick in? Let's ask a member of Congress. Ooh, look at those pants. A misnomer is when you call somebody something, or you call something something that doesn't make sense. Like when you call a fat guy tiny, okay? I'm wondering if it's a misnomer that the president is calling this coming Wednesday Liberation Day, because that's the day that his tariff plan takes effect. And Goldman Sachs is reporting that because of this, there is a 35% chance of a recession within the next year. And a new poll shows that most of you think Trump is focusing too much on tariffs and not enough on lowering prices. Let's discuss. Republican member of Congress Ryan Zinke, Montana, a state that will be greatly affected by the tariffs on Canada. It's good to see you, Congressman. First of all, Quiver Quantitative. This, you guys trading in stocks is a dicey proposition. What you're thinking about it and what he exposed with Pelosi and McCaul, not to condemn them, but buying stocks in companies that are going to benefit from bills that are before them currently?
Well, yeah, and two things. One, is there a conflict of interest? And are you voting on a specific stock with information that's not widely available to the public? That's a problem. You look at, for instance, if you're invested in energy, that's a broad spectrum. But if you're invested in a single stock and that stock rises or falls based on your action, then that's a conflict. And so I think the rules have to be tightened up. But a lot of it is whether it's actual or perception. There's a perception of conflict of interest, and that's a problem with Congress. Congress approval rating. We're at 19%, well earned. But with things like this, with the perception of the public, look, it's not worth the cost of the institution, damage in the institution. And look, again, if there's a stock trade and your action would rise or fall in a specific stock, then I think you need to have a third party where your actions don't dictate a stock rise or fall, especially on single issue stocks.
I mean, look, I'm not condemning anybody. I'm just saying, like you said, the smell test, it's not too good on this one. We'll see what happens. Tariffs. I have no problem with threatening tariffs if it gets America a better deal. But it is hard to make the case economically that once they go into effect, we're not going to feel it on the consumer side here. What do you say to your constituents who are like, you know, this is not great again?
Well, you know, purpose. For Montana, as you point out, Montana's probably hurt most because 86% of our trade comes from our friends in the North, Canada. Montana has a long relationship and a great relationship with our friends in the North. You know, but tariffs, I'm hoping, are short. But tariffs have to be for a purpose. When you apply tariffs, you know, what is the end result you expect? And I agree that we're vulnerable with critical minerals, that America needs to be able to manufacture without relying on allies or our fickle friends or adversaries. So there's greatness to be independent on energy needs, on critical minerals, on manufacturing, and have the core capability to do so. But tariffs broadly applied, you know, also hurt a lot of people. Give an example. There's a lot of automobile dealers in Montana and across the country that sell foreign products. You know, there's people out there, salesmen, there's repair people, there's all types of things. It's a great product. But you're going to target on those, and it's going to hurt. And what my wish is and my hope is, that, look, I understand that tariffs, we need fair and trade policies. We need fair agreements between the two. But let's make sure that tariffs are short and they're for a purpose, and that purpose should be narrowly defined.
Congressman, I appreciate it. Let's see if they go into effect. Let's see what it does. You're always welcome here to plead the case for your constituents, and I appreciate you being on it.
Well, you know, Chris, I enjoy. I tell you, I enjoy your show. You know what? You investigate, and look. While we may agree or disagree, we're never disagreeable, and I appreciate your points.
Well, I'm not disagreeable because you smacked me around like a head of lettuce. That's why. And I have no desire to get on your bad side. I'll argue with you, but that's where it ends. Take care, Ryan. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you for coming on the show. Hey, whenever you want, I'm buying, that's for sure. Hey, thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your screen. And don't forget, click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.